For 5 years, I built the future one line of code at a time. While most people at Orion Technologies recognize my wife, Claire, as the brilliant CEO leading one of the fastest-growing artificial intelligence companies in the country, almost no one knew who designed the technology that made those headlines possible. That was exactly how we wanted it. When Claire accepted the role of CEO 3 years earlier, we made one simple agreement. Our marriage would remain private inside the company. She would lead the business. I would continue leading the engineering team as a senior software architect. No special treatment, no public attention, no accusations that her husband received opportunities other employees hadn't earned. The arrangement worked surprisingly well. Claire became the confident face investors admired. I became the quiet engineer who preferred server rooms to conference stages. I never cared about recognition. Watching the platform grow was enough. The artificial intelligence system we built, internally known as Project Atlas, had started as little more than an idea scribbled across a whiteboard in my apartment. Night after night, I refined its learning architecture, redesigned its security framework, and optimized millions of lines of code until Atlas became the foundation of nearly every major product the company sold. Customer support, predictive analytics, business automation, medical research, Atlas powered them all. When industry magazines praised Orion's innovation, I felt proud without needing my name printed beneath the headlines. The technology itself spoke louder than any award ever could. Most mornings, I'd arrive before sunrise. The engineering floor remained almost empty except for a few developers who enjoyed quiet hours before meetings filled the day. I liked those mornings. They reminded me why I had become an engineer in the first place. Computers didn't care about office politics. Code either worked or it didn't. One Monday morning, while reviewing overnight performance reports, my friend Marcus rolled his chair beside my desk. "You hear the rumors?" I looked up from my monitor. "Which ones?" He lowered his voice. "Claire's meeting with Derek Lawson today." I sighed. "I've heard." Derek Lawson, CEO of Nexa Dynamics, a man whose reputation filled technology conferences almost as often as magazine covers. Brilliant marketer, aggressive negotiator, master of attracting investors. According to every business article I had read, Derek specialized in buying promising technology rather than creating it himself. "What do you think he wants?" Marcus asked. I already suspected the answer. "Atlas." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what everyone's saying." I leaned back in my chair. "If they're discussing partnerships, that's Claire's decision." Marcus looked unconvinced. "Still, I don't trust that guy." Neither did I. Not because Derek lacked intelligence. Because he had built a career convincing companies they needed him more than they actually did. By lunchtime, excitement had spread throughout headquarters. Employees whispered about possible international expansion. Executives hurried between meeting rooms carrying presentation folders. Even the marketing department seemed unusually energetic. Late that afternoon, Claire sent a company-wide email. Executive board meeting, mandatory attendance for senior leadership, engineering managers, department directors, vice presidents, everyone. Marcus glanced toward me. "Looks important." "It probably is." I saved my work, closed my laptop, and followed the stream of employees toward the executive conference room. I had no idea that within the next hour, everything I had spent 5 years building was about to be placed into someone else's hands. The executive conference room was already full when I arrived. Department heads sat along both sides of the long oak table, while dozens of senior employees filled the seats lining the walls. At the front of the room stood Claire, confident, professional. Beside her stood Derek Lawson. He wore an expensive tailored suit and greeted everyone with the polished smile of someone accustomed to winning people over before negotiations even began. Claire tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice." The room fell silent. As everyone knows, Orion Technologies has experienced tremendous growth over the past 3 years. A presentation appeared on the large screen behind her. Revenue charts, international market projections, investor forecasts. "Our next challenge," Claire continued, "is scaling our artificial intelligence platform for global expansion. She turned toward Derek. After months of discussion, I'm pleased to announce a strategic partnership with Nexa Dynamics. Polite applause echoed through the room. Derek stepped forward. Our companies share the same vision. Together, we'll accelerate innovation and bring Atlas to markets far faster than either company could alone. His confidence impressed many people. It didn't impress me. I had spent years protecting Atlas from shortcuts disguised as opportunities. Derek continued speaking. To ensure a smooth transition, my engineering division will assume primary responsibility for future development of the platform. A murmur spread across the room. I remained perfectly still. Claire glanced toward me. For a brief moment, our eyes met. Something about her expression felt almost apologetic. Then she looked away. As part of this restructuring, she said carefully, several leadership positions within engineering will be eliminated. Human resources began distributing sealed envelopes. Marcus looked confused as he accepted one. I received one as well. I already knew what it contained before opening it. Employment termination notice. Effective immediately. The words felt strangely ordinary. No anger rose inside me. Only disappointment. Claire looked directly at me. Daniel. Her voice echoed through the room. Would you please come forward? Every eye followed me as I stood. I walked calmly to the front of the conference room. No one there knew we shared a home. No one knew we had built this company together long before Claire became CEO. To everyone else, I was simply another senior engineer being dismissed during a corporate restructuring. Claire took a slow breath. I want to thank you for your years of service. This decision was not personal. It reflects the direction our company must take. Derek folded his arms confidently beside her. We appreciate the foundation you've helped create. My engineers will. Continue your work. Continue my work. The words almost made me smile. I looked around the room. Most employees avoided eye contact. Marcus stared at me in disbelief. Several managers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one spoke. Finally, I looked back at Claire. I understand. She blinked, almost surprised that I wasn't arguing. I hope you do. Our investors expect rapid expansion. This partnership gives us the best opportunity. I nodded once. I sincerely hope everything works out. I removed my employee badge from around my neck and placed it gently on the conference table. No dramatic speech. No accusations. No attempt to expose our marriage. Just quiet acceptance. I picked up the small box human resources had prepared for personal belongings and walked toward the exit. Behind me, Derek had already begun discussing development timelines with the board. He spoke confidently about improving Atlas, optimizing Atlas, expanding Atlas. He sounded as though the platform already belonged to him. The elevator doors closed behind me. For the first time in 5 years, I was no longer an employee of Orion Technologies. As I stepped into the evening air, my phone vibrated with an automated security notification. Administrative access request detected. Someone had already attempted to access the encrypted core architecture of Project Atlas. I looked at the notification for a long moment before quietly locking my phone. Claire believed she had transferred my platform to Derek's team. But there was one detail neither of them understood. Every critical component of Atlas still relied on encrypted access keys that I had legally created, documented, and controlled under the company's intellectual property security agreement. Without those keys, no one, not even the company's new development team, could modify the core system they believed they had just acquired for the first time in 5 years. I woke up without an office to go to. The silence in my apartment felt unfamiliar. Normally, by 6 o'clock, I would already be reviewing overnight system reports while drinking coffee and answering messages from the engineering team. That morning, my laptop remained closed on the kitchen table. I was no longer an Orion Technologies employee. Whatever happened inside the company no longer belonged to me. I had just finished breakfast when my phone buzzed. Marcus. I answered immediately. Good morning. His voice came through faster than usual. Daniel, you need to hear what's happening. I leaned back in my chair. What happened? They tried pushing the first software update this morning. And it failed. I wasn't surprised. What kind of failure? Marcus lowered his voice. The development environment locked everyone out. I remained silent. The new engineering team can't access the Atlas core. They thought the authentication servers were down. But they aren't. I already knew the likely explanation. When your employee account was terminated last night, your encryption certificates expired automatically. I closed my eyes briefly. Exactly as expected. Atlas had always followed a strict security architecture. Years earlier, after several high-profile cyber attacks affected technology companies across the industry, I redesigned the authentication system to meet international security standards. Every privileged developer possessed a unique cryptographic certificate. Those certificates renewed only while employment remained active. The moment an employee left the company, the certificates automatically became invalid. No manual action required. No exceptions. It wasn't a hidden feature. It wasn't a trap. It was the company's own approved cybersecurity policy. Marcus continued. Derek's engineers thought they could simply create new administrator accounts. They can't. The certificate authority refuses every request because they don't possess a trusted signing chain. I nodded to myself. Exactly. The certificate authority recognized only previously authorized security credentials. Replacing developers didn't automatically replace cryptographic trust. Marcus sighed heavily. The whole engineering floor is panicking. I stood and walked toward the living room window. Has anyone figured out why yet? Not officially. They're still blaming server synchronization. I looked out across the quiet morning streets. It won't take them long. No, it won't. Before ending the call, Marcus hesitated. Daniel, did you know this would happen? I answered honestly. I knew the security policy would function exactly as it was designed. Nothing more, nothing less. After hanging up, I opened my laptop, not to access Orion systems, but to review public cybersecurity documentation I had personally written years earlier. Every procedure remained exactly where it had always been. Every approval carried executive signatures, including Claire's, including the board's, including the legal department's. No one had questioned the security architecture when everything worked. Now, they were discovering how thoroughly it had protected the platform. Around 9:30, my phone vibrated again. Claire. I watched her name appear across the screen. For several moments, I simply looked at it. Then I answered. Hello. Her voice sounded nothing like it had during yesterday's board meeting. Daniel, we have a problem. I stayed calm. What kind of problem? The engineering systems won't authenticate. Derek's team can't deploy anything. I was told you might know why. I chose my words carefully. The security certificates probably expired. Silence. Then, can you come back to headquarters? I looked around my apartment. I'm sorry. I can't. What do you mean you can't? I'm no longer employed by Orion Technologies. The company revoked my access yesterday. She sounded frustrated. This is an emergency. I understand, but emergencies don't change legal authorization. There was another long silence. For the first time since our partnership began, Claire wasn't speaking to her husband. She was speaking to the one person the company had just decided it no longer needed. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, Claire broke the silence. Daniel, please. I need you to help us. Her voice carried a level of urgency I hadn't heard before. Not during product launches, not during investor meetings, not even when we had spent nights fixing unexpected software failures together. I closed my eyes for a moment. I want to help, then come back. I can't. Why not? Because yesterday, the company officially terminated my employment. You removed my credentials. You revoked my authority. And according to Orion's own security policy, a former employee cannot access production systems without written legal authorization. She sighed heavily. This isn't the time to quote policy. It actually is. I spoke gently. The security system is doing exactly what the board approved it to do. It prevents former employees from accessing critical infrastructure. That's the entire purpose of the policy. Claire didn't respond. I continued. I haven't disabled anything. I haven't deleted any files. I haven't blocked anyone. The authentication certificates simply expired when human resources processed my termination. Another long silence followed. Finally, she asked quietly, So, there's nothing you can do? There is. Hope immediately returned to her voice. Then, tell me. The company's legal department can authorize an emergency consulting agreement. They can issue temporary credentials through the approved security process. The board can approve it. Compliance can document it. And the security team can monitor every action. Everything I described already existed within Orion's governance procedures. Nothing required special treatment. Nothing bypassed security. Nothing violated company policy. Claire exhaled slowly. I didn't realize. You never needed to. Everything always worked. Before she could say anything else, another voice interrupted in the background. It sounded like Derek. Asked him if he kept backup administrator keys. Claire repeated the question. Do you have backup access? I do not. Why? Because no single engineer, not even me, was ever allowed unrestricted emergency access. That was another cybersecurity rule approved by the board. I remembered presenting that exact policy during a security review 2 years earlier. Everyone praised the design because it eliminated dangerous single points of failure. Now, those same protections felt inconvenient. They're saying the product launch may have to be delayed, Claire whispered. I felt sympathy for everyone involved. The engineers, the customers, even Claire. But sympathy couldn't justify ignoring proper procedures. My advice is simple. Follow the security process. It exists for moments exactly like this. She thanked me quietly before ending the call. An hour later, financial news websites began reporting unexpected delays at Orion Technologies. Investors questioned why the company's flagship AI platform had suddenly become unavailable for development. Online forums filled with speculation. Some claimed the company had suffered a cyber attack. Others guessed a major server failure. Only a handful of people inside Orion understood the truth. Nothing had been hacked. Nothing had been sabotaged. The system was simply enforcing the cybersecurity rules the company had spent years putting in place. Marcus called again that afternoon. You won't believe this. What happened? Several customer services experienced interruptions because scheduled updates couldn't be deployed. Support tickets are piling up, and investors are demanding answers. I looked at the rain beginning to fall outside my apartment window. What about Derek? Marcus laughed bitterly. He spent all morning promising everyone his engineers would fix everything. And now, they finally admitted they don't understand the Atlas security architecture. I wasn't happy to hear that. In fact, it saddened me. Thousands of employees depended on Orion's success. So did countless customers. The company deserved stability. But stability had never depended on one employee. It depended on understanding the technology well enough to lead it responsibly. For the first time, Claire was beginning to understand the difference between replacing an engineer and replacing the person who had designed the foundation beneath the entire platform. 3 days after the failed deployment, Orion Technologies announced an independent technical audit. The decision came from the board of directors, not because anyone believed a crime had occurred, because investors wanted answers. The company's reputation had suffered enough speculation. Facts mattered more than rumors. From my apartment, I watched business news channels discuss Orion almost nonstop. Some commentators claimed the company had ignored basic cybersecurity practices. Others suggested a disgruntled former employee had intentionally caused the disruption. Those stories disappeared almost as quickly as they appeared. The board hired one of the country's most respected cybersecurity consulting firms to examine every system involved in the incident. They were given complete access to security logs, engineering documentation, source control records, compliance reports, and board approvals dating back several years. I received a formal request to participate in an interview. Since I was no longer employed by Orion, the request came through their legal department. I agreed immediately. I had nothing to hide. The interview lasted nearly 4 hours. The lead auditor, Ms. Patel, sat across from me with a thick binder of technical documents. Mr. Carter, she began, we're trying to establish whether the authentication failure resulted from intentional action. It did not. She nodded. Can you explain the certificate system? I spent the next hour describing the architecture I had designed years earlier. Every privileged developer possessed a unique digital certificate. Those certificates automatically expired when human resources terminated employment. Replacement certificates required approval through the documented security chain involving legal, compliance, and executive authorization. Nothing about the process relied on memory. Everything had been documented. Everything had been reviewed. Everything had been approved. Ms. Patel compared my explanation with several company policy manuals. They match exactly. I would expect them to. I wrote both. She smiled slightly before making another note. Did anyone ever request that these security protections be removed? Several people suggested simplifying them. Did you agree? No. Why? Because security policies only matter when following them feels inconvenient. She nodded thoughtfully. That's a fair answer. Before the interview ended, she asked one final question. When you were terminated, did you make any attempt to prevent Orion from accessing its own platform? I answered without hesitation. No, I simply left. My access ended automatically. The system followed the company's own rules. 2 days later, the audit findings became public. The report reached one unmistakable conclusion. No sabotage had occurred. No malicious activity had been detected. The authentication failure resulted entirely from Orion Technologies' approved security architecture functioning exactly as designed. Every procedure complied with industry standards. Every encryption certificate behaved correctly. Every documented policy had been followed. My name appeared only briefly in the report, not as the cause of the crisis, as the engineer who had properly implemented the security framework years earlier. For the first time since the board meeting, public opinion began changing. Attention shifted away from me for another question. If the security system had always worked correctly, why had the company believed replacing its lead architect would be so simple? That answer emerged during the second phase of the audit. Investigators reviewed the presentations Derek Lawson had delivered while negotiating Orion's partnership. What they discovered left the entire board stunned. The second phase of the audit focused on Derek's proposals. Unlike the technical review, this investigation examined business claims, engineering capabilities, and the promises that had convinced Orion's leadership to approve the partnership. The findings were difficult to ignore. According to the auditors, Derek's presentations had significantly overstated his team's familiarity with Atlas. His engineers had experience with artificial intelligence systems in general, but they had never worked with the specialized security architecture that protected Orion's platform. Several statements presented during board meetings described the transition as something that could be completed within days. The auditors concluded there was no technical evidence supporting that timeline. Instead, the report stated that critical implementation challenges had either been underestimated or omitted entirely during negotiations. When the findings reached Orion shareholders, confidence in Derek disappeared almost overnight. The emergency board meeting that followed lasted nearly 6 hours. By the end of it, Derek's company had been removed from the Atlas project. The partnership agreement was suspended pending further review, and an internal governance committee was formed to evaluate how such a significant decision had been approved without a deeper technical assessment. This time, no one applauded. No one spoke confidently about rapid expansion. Everyone wanted accountability. A week later, Claire asked if we could meet. Not at headquarters, not in a conference room, at a quiet cafe where no one from the company was likely to recognize us together. When I arrived, she was already there. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, and the confident executive who had addressed the board only days earlier seemed replaced by someone carrying the weight of every decision she had made. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. I took the seat across from her. "How are you holding up?" She gave a tired smile. "I've been better." For a moment, she stared into her untouched cup of coffee. Then she finally spoke. "I trusted polished presentations instead of proven expertise." Her voice was steady, but filled with regret. "I listened to promises that sounded exciting. I overlooked years of work that had already proven itself." She met my eyes. "And I treated your loyalty like it was just another business expense." I remained quiet. "There isn't an excuse for that." "I know." She took a slow breath. "I'm sorry, Daniel. Not because the audit cleared you. Not because the board is questioning my decisions. I'm sorry because I stopped valuing the person who helped build everything we had. The apology felt genuine. There was no attempt to shift blame, no effort to justify her choices. Only honesty. After long silence, I nodded. I forgive you. Tears formed in her eyes. You do. I forgave you before we sat down. She looked relieved, but I gently continued. Forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. Her expression fell slightly. I know. I folded my hands on the table. Trust isn't lost in one dramatic moment. It's shaped by hundreds of decisions. And leadership works the same way. She listened carefully. A leader earns confidence through consistent judgment, not through desperate apologies after a crisis. She slowly nodded. You're right. I wish I had understood that sooner. So do I. We sat quietly for another minute before standing to leave. As we walked toward the door, I realized I no longer felt bitterness. Only clarity. People make mistakes. Good leaders learn from them. But some lessons arrive only after the consequences have already changed everything. Claire had finally understood the difference between believing impressive promises and trusting the person who had quietly proven himself every single day. 1 year changed everything. The morning I walked out of Orion Technologies carrying a single laptop and a cardboard box, I believed I was leaving behind the most important work of my life. I couldn't have been more mistaken. Sometimes the hardest ending quietly becomes the strongest beginning. After the legal agreements surrounding my departure were finalized, I spent several months thinking carefully about what kind of company I wanted to build. Not the biggest, not the most famous, the most trustworthy. I rented a modest office on the third floor of an old brick building downtown. There are no impressive glass walls or luxurious executive suites. Just a handful of desks, reliable computers, and a whiteboard covered with ideas. That was enough. I called the company Logic. Its mission fit onto a single page. Build software that solved real problems. Treat every employee with respect. Never sacrifice long-term trust for short-term attention. Those principles became part of every hiring interview. Technical skill mattered. Character mattered more. The first few months were difficult. Large clients hesitated to work with a brand new company. Banks questioned our growth projections. Investors wanted faster expansion than I was willing to promise. I politely declined opportunities that required compromising the culture I wanted to create. Slow growth built on honesty was better than rapid growth built on unrealistic expectations. Gradually, people noticed, not because of expensive marketing campaigns, because satisfied clients recommended us. Word spread through the technology community that Logic valued engineers instead of treating them as interchangeable resources. Then something unexpected happened. Former colleagues from Orion began contacting me. Marcus arrived first. He stepped into my office carrying a backpack and smiled. You hiring? I might be. He laughed. I figured. I've had enough meetings where polished presentations matter more than technical reality. He joined the company the following Monday. Others followed. Senior developers, cybersecurity specialists, product designers. Every person who came said something remarkably similar. They weren't leaving Orion because of higher salaries. They were leaving because they wanted to work where honesty carried more weight than office politics. Within a year, our team had grown from 4 employees to nearly 80. The office atmosphere remained exactly as I had imagined. Junior engineers questioned senior architects without fear. Managers admitted mistakes openly instead of hiding them. Successes belonged to the team. Failures became opportunities to improve together. One Friday afternoon, a young developer nervously knocked on my office door. Do you have a minute? Of course. She stepped inside, holding a notebook. I think I found a flaw in the authentication system. I smiled. Show me. She explained her concerns carefully. When she finished, I nodded. I think you're right. Her eyes widened. You do. I do. I'll fix it immediately. She looked surprised. You thought I'd defend my own design? She nodded awkwardly. I laughed. The goal isn't protecting my pride. It's protecting our software. She left smiling. Watching her walk away, I realized something important. The best leaders don't build organizations where they're always right. They build organizations where everyone feels safe enough to improve what already exists. That was the company I had always hoped to create. A few months later, Logic received an invitation to present our newest artificial intelligence platform at one of the world's largest international technology conferences. Engineers, researchers, investors, and business leaders from dozens of countries gathered to showcase the year's most important innovations. Standing backstage before my presentation, I couldn't help remembering another stage. A boardroom, a conference table. The day I quietly handed over my employee badge and walked away with nothing but my laptop and my dignity. At the time, it had felt like the end of everything I had worked for. Now, I understood it had only been the beginning. Our platform was designed around one simple philosophy. Artificial intelligence should assist people, not replace their judgment. Every feature emphasized transparency, security, and responsible decision-making. The audience listened attentively as I demonstrated how the system explained its recommendations instead of hiding them behind mysterious algorithms. When the presentation ended, the applause lasted far longer than I expected. That evening, the conference hosted its annual Innovation Award ceremony. Companies from around the world waited as the winners were announced. When the presenter opened the final envelope, I heard the words I never imagined hearing. The International Innovation Award goes to Logic. For a moment, I simply sat there. Marcus nudged my shoulder. "I think they're talking about you." The entire table burst into laughter. As I walked toward the stage, I noticed several familiar faces in the audience. Some were former Orion employees. Others were industry leaders who had followed the company's earlier crisis from a distance. Near the back of the hall, I also saw Claire. She was no longer Orion's CEO. Months earlier, she had stepped down after accepting responsibility for the decisions that led to the company's leadership crisis. Rather than disappearing from the industry, she had begun working with business schools and executive leadership programs, speaking honestly about the importance of listening to technical experts before making strategic decisions. When our eyes briefly met, she smiled. Not with regret, with quiet respect. I returned the smile before stepping to the microphone. The award felt surprisingly heavy in my hands. I looked across the audience for a long moment. Then I spoke. A year ago, I walked out of my office carrying one laptop and wondering whether my career had just ended. The room became completely silent. I believed I had lost everything that mattered. I paused. But sometimes life removes us from places we have outgrown. It gives us the opportunity to build something we never would have imagined otherwise. I looked toward my team seated together near the front. This award doesn't belong to one engineer. It belongs to every person who chose honesty over shortcuts. Every developer who challenged ideas because they wanted better solutions. And every teammate who understood that respect is the strongest foundation any company can build. I held the award a little higher. Then I smiled. Technology can be copied. Trust cannot. Protect both, and success will follow. For a heartbeat, the room remained perfectly still. Then the audience rose to its feet. The applause echoed throughout the hall. It wasn't applause for revenge. It wasn't applause because another company had stumbled. It was applause for something far more meaningful. The belief that integrity lasts longer than popularity. That leadership is measured by character, not titles. And that the strongest companies are not built by the loudest voices in the room, but by people who quietly earn trust one decision at a time. As I stepped away from the podium and joined my team, I realized losing my position had never truly been the end of my career. It had simply cleared the path toward the work and the purpose I was always meant to build.